Are you frustrated with online dating? Confused by all the new apps and fancy dating sites? Do you find yourself choosing the wrong person again and again? Well, studies show that hiring a dating coach can maximize your online dating experience. So no worries, I've got you. And I've created a virtual course called Doing Dating Right. It's a 5-video series that you can complete at your own pace in your own space, right at home. How to write your online dating bio, pick that perfect picture, and so much more. Want more info? Go to my website at jenniferhurwitz.com. Again, it's jenniferhurwitz.com. Okay. Good morning. This is Doing Relationships Right. I'm Jennifer Hurwitz and I'm your host. I'm back. It's Tuesday and I have a guest. Look at her. She's beautiful. If you're watching and if you're not watching, then you're going to hear in a minute. It's Lindsey Ellison, my friend. It's so nice to see you, darling. I haven't seen you in so long. It's been a long time.
It really has. I think it's been like 2 or 3 years, which is crazy. I know. Yeah.
Gosh, too long.
It was definitely pre-COVID.
Yeah. Have you been on the show twice?
Yes.
Okay. You've been through this is third time is a charm.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have you back. Okay. So Lindsey Ellison is a breakup breakthrough coach.
Yes.
Expert, specialist. You know what you're doing.
Narcissism expert.
I love it. And I have to tell you, I've sent so many people to you that I'm frightened. I can't even tell you. Everyone that comes to me, I'm like, no, you need to see Lindsey. She's got the book. She's got the thing. She knows what she's doing. So I am so excited that you're here.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. And I know we've been trying to schedule this for so long. So I'm just so happy we can connect.
Absolutely. Okay. So first of all, do me a favor. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you tell my listener what you're all about, what's happening in your life, how you started, where you've had quite the journey.
I have as of late. Yeah. And if anyone knows me who's listening to you and has heard me, so I've been a coach for 10 years and I've evolved, like we all do professionally. Started off as divorce coaching and just helping people get through the divorce. But then I started really talking about narcissism and, because I divorced a narcissist and co-parent with one. And I finally kind of cracked the code years ago on how to talk to him and negotiate with him and get past his bullying. I found that there was kind of an algorithm and a secret sauce to it. I was coaching people one-on-one about it. And then I said, there needs to be a book. So I wrote this book about, 3 years ago, probably. I can't believe it. 3 years ago, Magic Words, How to Get What You Want from a Narcissist. And it's been a bestseller because there's nothing really out there it's a short, quick read. It's about an hour and a half read. With a simple process on how to break through the fear and the blockage that you have with a high conflict person. And I didn't realize back then about what I was really writing about, which is pretty much involved in my coaching, is really getting to the root of someone's trauma.
Right.
And so a narcissist, any high conflict person, generally has some kind of personality disorder. A lot of people, I'm sure you've heard this too, is where it may not be narcissism, but they could be on the spectrum. It could be Asperger's or autism, which can come off as narcissistic. So it's kind of hard to tell,
It's so hard to tell. You're the first person that's actually said that to me, that's been on the show. I've had lots of people who's actually said that out loud. And I'm so glad you just said that, because I deal with this quite often, where narcissism, it does look like Asperger's on the spectrum. It does.
Yeah, it does.
It's hard to tell.
And, I'm coaching someone right now whose soon to be ex is on the spectrum. He's coming off as very narcissistic, right? And hello.
It's not me, but I got one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is we can get so caught up in the label. Right? Is he a narcissist? Is he Aspies? Is he bipolar? Is he borderline? And it really doesn't matter so much is the behavior.
Right, thank you.
And then how it clashes with your trauma and your background. So anyone who's in a high conflict situation and you just can't resolve it, you're dealing with probably very damaged, broken people. And so that's really what my book was really getting you to get past the fear and the bullying and really understanding the person's personality and his background or her background as to what was the family system, what was the family of origin and the complete dynamic. And you can really pull out, if you do the work in my book, you start to build hopefully a completely different lens around this person, and you have a different way of communicating. So that's where I had with the book. Since then, I've been married twice. So I got married from a narcissist, then got married the second time. And for the most part, it was a really wonderful marriage. I really, really thought it was going to last forever. And unfortunately, last year we split up. And, but this was different, right? I wasn't dealing, he's not a narcissist. It was a very amicable split, and we still get along well, but it just wasn't working. And around 2020, and right after COVID hit, he lost his job. My kids are not in school. We all had it.
Yeah.
And I was unknowingly suffering from a breakdown. And being that I was a coach and coaching and holding everyone up, I was not holding me up.
Oh my gosh, right.
And
don't you feel like that?
Oh God,
like we all do that. We're coaching, and it's like the shoemaker's shoe. What is it? The shoemaker's kids go without shoes. Is that
That's a great expression. I've actually never heard of that, but yes,
we're the ones who are helping everybody else, and we don't take care of ourselves.
Yes. And I would get off the phone with clients and I would be like, okay, am I living that? Am I doing the advice that I just gave? And I started to secretly feel fraudulent and fake and that I don't belong doing this job. That's really, and so, but I had to make a living because my husband doesn't have a job. So there was just this unbelievable amount of pressure. And then, everyone's looking at my Instagram and everyone thinks I have it all together. And I didn't have it all together. And I really, back then, and I've gone through a lot of work on this, I really subscribed to this element of perfectionism. And if I'm not perfect, or if you don't see me that way and I have flaws, then I'm not worthy of being here as a coach, and so all of that started to buckle, and then a lot of other personal things going on with my ex and his family, and the weight of the world was on me, and I started to just shut down, and really I was just completely unable to work, and my husband moved out kind of on this temporary thing. I felt abandoned. I felt alone. And I couldn't tell anyone. I could. I didn't think I could. Right. And so I just started to get really, really depressed and have thoughts of suicide and ending it. And I don't think I would have, but it was really, really bad. I mean, I was having your absolute ultimate mental health breakdown. My parents started to really check in with me, and because I was isolating myself, I was drinking too much. I'm not normally a big drinker, but I was then, and so long story short, I decided to check out and go get help. And well, it was in the moment. It was defeating. I felt like I lost.
So strong. You're so strong.
And I thought, what is everyone going to think about me? And I'm going to get fired from all my clients, and I have no business when I get home. But it didn't matter because I said, I was just so broken. And I really couldn't understand why. And I thought maybe I'm bipolar because I was having such a huge low. And bipolar really runs in my family, my mother, my grandmother, my cousins. And so I'm like, here it is. I got the bipolar bug, right? This is it. And so I went away and I went to one of the top places in the country on trauma. And I have childhood trauma. My mother died in a car accident when I was 6 years old.
I remember.
And, but I thought I'd worked through that, but when I got there, I recognized that wasn't just that. What happened is my father had lost a wife, they're in their early 30s, 2 kids, and he checked out. And so I was abandoned by my mother, but I was also abandoned by my father.
Right.
And I didn't know that. I didn't, because he's physically here. I still, he's still in my life, but I've always had a very difficult relationship with him. He's a bit of a narcissist himself. And I had a lot of wounds that I did not know was there. So abandonment is a theme that runs in my life. So what happened is when my husband left, and I told him to leave, by the way, it's not like he just disappeared.
Right. But it doesn't matter. Right. We have to ask some questions, but keep going. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah. So he left, and then I felt it just triggered everything. And I didn't know this, but I was experiencing a trauma reaction so severe. I was shutting down, not able to function, because that's what children do when they lose their parent. And so that's really what changed the course of everything for me. And I went through this program, and it was really like getting a PhD in mental health. And it was just the most amazing program ever. And I came
out of bad things, right? Trauma.
Oh yeah.
Something amazing happens.
Not only that, it's just like my life has been so awesome. And since I've been back. And so long story short, I come back at the end of 2020, and the fall of 2020, my husband and I split, and I went through the pain of a breakup, and I had, and because we really still loved each other, and I have never broken up with someone that I still love. I broke up with someone that I'm like, get the fuck out of this house. And like, easy. I hate you. That's so much easier. Totally easier. Right. So I ended up breaking up with him and went through this pain. I wrote a book about it, and we could talk about that. But that's where my coaching just started to evolve, and the light bulbs went off for me. And so I came back and I created an online course to talk about and educate people on how our trauma from our childhood and unresolved trauma will continue to affect us, because when we have childhood trauma, we create what's called an adapted ego state. It's how we survive in our family system, and we become and detach from our authentic self. And so we end up going into adulthood as the adapted adult child. And so when we do that, we are not attached to our authentic self and who we are. And so we often match with someone who's going through the same thing. And so we continue to see dysfunction in relationship after relationship after relationship. And so we wonder why am I on, why can't I find someone, or why do I keep meeting the bad guys, et cetera. So that's pretty much I won't go too much into if you have questions, but that's pretty much how what I love to talk about is our trauma.
Okay, good.
And
I have some questions for you. So first of all,
yes, please.
I think, of course, I'm tearing up, and very rarely do I cry on the show, but I am so proud of you is like the wrong thing. You're just so strong. You know how I feel about you. So that's that.
I know. Thank you.
Secondly, childhood trauma. First of all, I think people, and we're in the coaching, we get it, but I think people do not understand what exactly child trauma is, because people say to me, oh, no, I'm fine. My childhood was great. My dad was awesome. No, we fought all the time. Explain exactly what it means. You don't have to be physically abused or, molested for it to be a childhood trauma.
Absolutely.
Explain, Lindsey, please.
Yes. So I'm really glad you asked that question, because I don't believe my trauma was really so much associated with my mother's death. Mm-hmm. That's obvious, right?
Sure.
You lose a parent in a car, and I was with her too. So I almost died, that's traumatic. But there's what's called big T's and little T's. So that's a big T, right?
Sure.
Big trauma. The little T's actually are harder to deal with, because they're almost covert. We can't really understand them. And little T's can add up to big T's. So little T's are just not getting attention, so often, if you're the younger sibling and you've got older siblings, or your parents just aren't paying attention to you. They're working all the time. Your parents are fighting. And as children, we also forget that we were once children, and we are so innocent and so vulnerable, and we look to our caregivers to take care of us. And so when that starts to feel unstable, and we're not getting the nurturing that we need, despite our parents' best efforts, right? Doesn't make our parents bad people. Right. We start to feel nervous and we get scared. And so what we do is we squash the authentic child within us, and we try to not be seen. We become the good girl. So we take on a role, and you've heard it: the mediator, the scapegoat, the golden child, the mascot, the people pleaser. Those are adapted roles. They are an adapted ego state. It's how we adapt. It's how we adapt in our childhood. And we will often get rewarded for being that adapted self. So for me, I was the scapegoat child.
Okay.
Scapegoat means you're the trash can of the family, and the whole family system's dysfunctional, but it's only dysfunctional because of you, Lindsey, right? But meanwhile, everyone else is dysfunctional, but no one wants to admit there's dysfunction. And I was happy to admit it. I'm like, yep, I'm the dysfunctional one. I'm the black sheep of the family, right? But it really wasn't just me. It was everybody.
This is so eye-opening for me, because I've, to talk to you about this, you know so much about it. It's true. I mean, I'm just listening and I'm like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
The thing that's so interesting is you have to remember, everyone wants to blame their parents, right? It's so easy to say, well, it's because my dad did this or blah, blah. But it's really, like you just said, you can't, they, despite their best effort, they did the best job they could. And it's still, right? I mean,
and so what happens when we experience trauma? So I want to define trauma, and this is really simple. Trauma is anything less than nurturing. Yep.
Wow. Wait,
anything less. Trauma is anything less than nurturing.
So what do we do, Lindsey?
Well, here we go, right?
Okay.
So we have to understand, and this is what my course helps, this comprehensive course that I developed, which is called Breakup Breakthrough, but it's to have this breakthrough of this breakup is a gold mine of information, right? So when we break up with someone, there's so much information, we often ignore it and just go to the next relationship, and then we repeat it.
I'm coaching a lot of those.
Yeah. So we end up having all of this gold mine of information, but we don't know what to do with it. So then we have to go back into our family of origin and understand it's kind of like looking and finding the virus within us, going deep and looking deep within and looking at your timeline. And there are certain things that we all in our timeline of our childhood timeline that we remember, and they could be so slight. So here's a great example. If your teacher made fun of you in class, you ask a question, you make fun of, and then you're made fun of in class, and the kids are laughing, and you remember that's trauma. So when we remember certain aspects of our timeline, so we don't remember what we ate in 1983 on June 3rd. We don't remember that unless something happened.
Sure.
Right? Unless we saw our parent throw something across the room, then we remember that day. So trauma and memories get stored in a different part of our brain. Mm-hmm. So when we store it, I call it just the vault. We call it the trauma vault, just to be easy. And we store it, and our brain remembers these events, and we adapt to make sure that doesn't keep happening. So for instance, in that example of our teacher making fun of us, right then, that's a trauma event because it's anything less than nurturing. It's not nurturing. There's shame attached to it. What we call that is intellectual abuse, right? There's 5 different kinds of abuse. Yeah. That particular teacher made fun and abused this student in this scenario intellectually. So then what happens when those events happen, we instantly subconsciously attach a narrative to that of an I am not.
Sure.
Right? Or I am nots. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm stupid. Everyone's going to make fun of me. So then we adapt a behavior around it. I'm never raising my hand again. Right?
Absolutely. Right.
And that is a little T. But if that keeps happening every day at the classroom or at home, we start to create that adapted self, and we lose sight of our authentic self. So in that scenario, the authentic child is just asking a question like, I'm curious and I don't understand this, or I need help. That's a vulnerable thing. But when we get shamed, we start to adapt. And this poor child who is supposed to be authentic and vulnerable gets shamed. And so she's like, I'm never doing that again. Right? So that's what happens in our childhood. And depending on the family system, and what I mean by family system is whether it's a rigid, dysfunctional, cohesive
paradigms. When I was in school, like the family paradigms, random, synchronous,
enmeshed. A lot of damage that I see from men and women is this notion of what's called carried energy or carried emotion, where we see said parent not being able to parent us. We pick up on that, or not be able to parent our siblings. And then we take on the role of a parent. So in my situation, I see my dad's not able to parent. I do the best to parent myself. I attach to other caregivers significantly.
Okay.
Like nannies and babysitters and teachers and friends, and I became very clingy and very needy. So that was my adapted way of this is how I survive in this world, right? Mm-hmm. So when we become this child who needs someone and we're not getting parented, or we see our siblings not being parented, that's not our fault, but we assign it as our fault because that's the way we can control things.
Wow.
That's the adapted self. So when we take that notion and we put that into adulthood, we become an adapted adult child of, I have to fix this because no one's going to help me. Mm. I have to go and caretake because no one caretakes of me. No one's taking care of me. And then you have this false identity that you have to take care of everyone because no one's going to take care of you. And that's what we call being invulnerable, where we build walls. And that's the beginning of codependency, the origins of caretaking and finding people to rescue and fixing them because no one helped us. And so when you discover all of that and you break it down and you have this understanding, then you can recognize, okay, well, who is my authentic self? Here's a great example. I'm a very creative person. And I've always been, as a child, I was a dancer, a singer. I was very musically, talented, a writer. And my father is so none of those things. And so he never nurtured that spirited child. And instead, he just would always say, Lindsey, why do you have to always be in the spotlight? Shame, right? Shame. And then I quieted it down. And then that authentic child adapted.
Yeah.
So the only way I could get love from my father or attention or nurturing was to take care of him and to be someone that I'm not, as well as take on his energy. So we call this carried energy and carried emotion. So when dad is stressed, I'm stressed. One of the symptoms we come with that, and I bet this is a mic drop for pretty much all of your listeners, is we become hypervigilant. We know facial expressions really well. We understand when our partners are crossing their arms or they're not paying attention to us, or the minute they walk in the door, we can sense their energy. The self-help world has called this empath. And I hate that word. I really do, because that sounds positive to me. Oh, you're an empath. No, I actually find it to be very destructive. What it is, it's hypervigilance. Wow. And we've had to become hypervigilant in order to read our caregiver so that we stay safe.
That is a mic drop moment for me, for everybody. Because you're right. Everyone, I've always thought empath to myself, like, oh, you're an empath. That's so great. You're so empathetic and you understand. Oh.
No, you're an empath because you were taught and conditioned to read and carry someone's energy so that you don't get hurt. Wow. Yeah. And so then how do we come out of this? How do we find this authentic, right?
Going, what do I mean, because
right.
Of course, when I listen to my listeners, I'm listening to my experts, I'm like, oh my God, I need to do something because of course now I'm coaching and I'm thinking to myself, not only do my clients need to see you, because I feel like a lot of my clients come to me not ready. They're not ready to date because we all have, I mean, now that I know exactly, because I knew from talking what childhood trauma is, I mean, I got a whole lot, Lindsey.
Yeah, we all do though. Before. Right. You know? Here's a great example. When I'm writing, I love writing. I love writing. If I could write books all day and never coach again, I probably would, because I lose myself into it. And I love coaching, but I love writing when I write, I figured this out. I have a trauma reaction right away. I can get writer's block and I go through this spiral of shame. where I don't value my work. That is not me. That's my dad.
I think we're the same person.
Right? I know.
With our dads? And you know what? I love him. He's
me
like,
too.
Of course, I don't want to, I never want to say like, oh my God, but legit, like that's how I feel.
Yeah. And so that is, now I have tools to shut that down and work and move it. Right. So the tool is, anytime we're feeling bad, we're not our authentic self. So the first thing we have to do is, my authentic side is I'm spirited, spontaneous, and creative. Let's just take a couple of those 3 words, right?
I love those.
So are you. And when we're doing something and that gets shut off, we now know that that's a switch to something. We're having a reaction, a trauma reaction to something. Okay. Where is this coming from? Then I go, what are my thoughts? What am I making up about this? And let's just say if I'm writing and I get anxiety and I start to feel the anxiety, I'll have to kind of, let's just come up with this sort of like, this is a really bad idea. I'm not worthy of speaking my ideas. Well, that's not true, right? But let's look at the behavior. What's going on in my body? I'm feeling anxious. I'm having a massive ADD moment. I can't focus. And I'm starting to shut down and then I could cry. Like a full-on block. But then I'm going to say, all right, how old am I in this situation right now? How old do I feel? And that is one of the biggest questions we can ask ourselves when we're having a moment. I have a saying, if the tears come fast, it's from the past.
Anyone who's been through a divorce knows co-parenting is not all rainbows and sunshine, especially when alcohol abuse is involved. Pair these challenges with a pandemic and you have a perfect storm. Soberlink's alcohol monitoring system is the most convenient, reliable, and reasonable way for a parent to provide evidence that they are not drinking during parenting time. Soberlink's real-time alerts make it easy to negotiate with any party. Judges rest assured that the child is safe. Attorneys get court-admissible evidence of sobriety. And both parents have empowerment and peace of mind. Do divorce right and trust the experts in remote alcohol monitoring technology to keep your kids safe, happy, and well-adjusted. To download the guide, 5 non-negotiables for embracing a new normal that I developed with Soberlink, visit www.soberlink.com/DRR. Oh, I love it. If the tears come fast, it's from the past.
Yeah. So if we're like, just if someone just says something to you and tears are welling up and you're like a deer in headlights, that's from your past. That's not what's going on right now. Because your functional adult self is like, you could just easily observe them and go, that was kind of mean. Why would you say that to me? Right.
Wow.
We're not having a trauma reaction with that.
Okay.
Because we're logically in our functional self.
I get it.
So if the tears come fast and as I'm crying and I'm having a moment, I'll say, how old am I right now? Okay. It's always between 8 and 10 years old, because that's where a lot of the neglect came from, where I was creative and going into acting and singing and all that. And no one, none of my parents, nobody came to my shows. I mean, I sang at the Kennedy Center in DC and I was by myself.
Okay. No, that's not okay.
That's not okay.
I have chills right now. That is not okay. See,
I had no idea it was not okay.
That's not okay. I
know.
That's not
Thank you. And I recognize that this was neglect, right? Now, again, I don't have no idea what's going on with my dad at the time, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you think that that I overparent now? That's the wrong word. But do you think because I recognize that I don't want to be that parent that I'm now hyper parenting?
That so many people do that. Absolutely. We can.
Like and we everything. Like I don't miss a thing because I'm so scared that I don't want to do what, does that make sense?
Yeah. So in the world of recovery, we like to look at the word moderation, right? Are we doing things? So in a child who's coming from trauma, neglect, like anything less than nurturing, we then have an adapted adult self of all or nothing mindset, right? Okay. I'm going to do it all, or I'm not going to do it at all, right? Lindsey, all or nothing.
I love you. I could sit with you all day. I think my listeners are like, they have a pencil right now taking notes.
Well, thank you.
You're just so, this is okay, right. And all or nothingness. I'm like, I feel like I just cannot, I feel overwhelmed with my like they're 19, your age, same as your age. I just cannot, I have to be there. I have to be there.
Right. So if that gives you joy, fulfillment, and purpose, then that could be good. And if that gives them joy, fulfillment, and purpose, that could be good. But if it's starting to, you use the word overwhelm, right? So there's some negativity there. Yeah. And so then you're like, this is, by being so involved in my child's life, you might be neglecting yourself a little bit of what do I need? And having balance in your romantic relationship, your work relationship, et cetera. So then it's just about moderation. Okay. How do you have balance and moderation? And we do that. I know for me, I definitely have all or nothing thinking with work, everything. It's that's actually, the sign of an addict, right? The addicted brain is all or nothing. An alcoholic can't have moderation, right? No. I also like to say the way I treat codependency, and I don't mean clinically treat it, but from a coaching perspective. Sure. And this, I didn't make up this word, but this is codependency is seen as an addiction. Yeah. That's why there's CODA. 12-step group, addiction. So the way I like to say is open up the big book of AA and replace the word drinking with thinking. Codependents have a thinking problem. We have distorted thinking. We are all or nothing. We get obsessed. We overcomplicate. We caretake. We make up things constantly. It's the distorted thinking. What is that? Think of it as a child. Children make up shit all the time.
When you say make up shit, you mean like make up problems? Or make up like narratives in my head that things are going to happen?
Yeah. So for instance, a distorted thought so children, as a way to cope, they create fantasy, right? They can't control their situation. So let's just say they're watching mom and dad fighting and it's really scary. So she's going to check out and go play upstairs and make something up, or she's going to draw, or there's going to be some creative thing. And that's how she coped. Well, the adapted child, as she gets older, when she feels a red flag in a relationship, she's going to make shit up. She's not going to see it. She's going to create a fantasy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like she's okay. So like, let's say she's in a narcissistic relationship. She's going to be like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Denial.
really Denial. Oh.
And the fantasy. So narcissists, you wanted to talk about this. Good segue. Narcissists. I know. Narcissists are what? They're masters of fantasy. They are the knight in shining armor. They love it. They love the Cinderella, let me scoop you up off your feet. Well, if we are children of trauma, that is how we survived our childhood, is through fantasy. And we're looking for that and we need it like heroin. Yep. So when we see a guy who's giving you, the red carpet, 0 to 80 really quick, the love bombing, right?
Love bombing, I swear. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. Oh but it's so hard to see though.
It is so hard to see.
I gotta tell you, I dated someone early last year and I knew him so my guard was down a little bit because we were friends and and I didn't realize he was love bombing me. He was just so good at it. And yeah. And of course it was like, and I was coming out of a breakup and I was like a well, I was like a dried well and it feels so good. Right.
It does feel good, doesn't it? Until it
but
doesn't.
We get the whole fantasy. What I mean is fantasy seeking. It's not fantasy from a sexual fantasy. No. It's not, it's the fantasies we make things up.
Sure.
It's the distorted thinking.
Right.
And so when we are dating and we're going, how many times have you heard this? How do I make sure I never date a narcissist? Is you have to constantly be checking in with your reality. Yes. And if you're a recovering codependent, which I am, and I will always say that I am, I used to say, before I had my little meltdown, that I graduated from codependency. You can never graduate from it. You have to manage it like a disease, like an addiction.
Yeah.
And so I now know, all right, what's triggering you, right? Always know what your triggers are. And that's what I do in my work, is that I do a trigger mitigation plan. Let's look at your childhood. Let's understand your family system and what are your I am nots. And from there we pull out, okay, here are your triggers here are the events that you know. And so someone dating who doesn't have issues the way we do as codependents could go at a different speed, but we have to go much, much slower, and we have to know what we have to manage and vocalize that. And if we don't, and we get caught up in a narcissist, we can become part of their fantasy. And that's why we become such matches for them, because what we were saying before we hit the record button is a narcissist and a codependent. We have the exact same background. We have the exact same childhood.
To me. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, how would I know that? Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I don't work at, this is not my, but I'm telling you, I do have clients that need to come see you first.
Well, I'm here. Give me a call.
See you first, send them back to me and I'll help them find a date. I'm like, that's
exactly.
Sorry,
I keep hitting the mic.
My jam is writing online profiles and finding date, but it's really hard when you have someone come to you and I look at them and I'm like, oh no, you're not, you're just not ready.
Yeah.
Because they're not. I can tell.
So here's a great example for anyone listening and you're not ready, is you're on Match.com, you're on Tinder or whatever, and you're talking to this guy and you're like, oh my God, this is really great. And then he ghosts you. And if you can't bounce back from that, and you have to check in with your emotions, if your emotions around that are not within moderation, you're not ready. And what do I mean by moderation? It's allowed to, you could feel a little blown off and you can feel hurt, right? But if you're having a reaction of like, I'm never doing this again, or how could he have done that to me, when you don't even know the guy, right? Or you're crying, that is a sign that that's unresolved shit from your past, right? If your tears come fast, it's from the past. So that's when you know. So if you are dating or early dating, and let's just say you've met a guy and you're in the courting phase and you're constantly getting triggered, or he's not calling you and it seems a little weird, or things aren't adding up, depending on where you are in your life stage, you might be like, well, he's so great in all these other areas, so I'm not going to speak up for myself. That's a distorted thought. That's the thinking problem, right? And if we go deeper, and this is mind-blowing shit too, is that moment, that exact example that I just gave of, well, he's such a great guy on so many other levels that I don't want to speak up. Oh my God, you learned that when you were a kid, right? You as a child wanted to speak up to said caregiver, and they shut you down. And there's this thing called nascent reason. Nascent reason. NASCENT, I believe, reason.
Okay.
It is an element that every child knows their truth. We're born with it. It's called nascent reason. And as we grow, let's say around 6 years old, we have an understanding of truth. We actually know what between right and wrong. We just know instinctively. But if we see mom drinking on the couch and completely ignoring you, we know it's wrong. A child knows it's wrong. That's the nascent reason. The abuse happens when this little girl says, Mom, I think you should stop drinking. And she would say, that's none of your business. Right. What I do is, I'm your mother. And so nascent reason gets altered in a child mind state of, okay, maybe my truth isn't my truth. So then we go into, okay, now we're confused. And if that keeps happening, that's why children who get sexually abused, they're being told it's fine, but they know it's not fine. They literally know it's not fine, and they don't know who to tell. But that's, again, an extreme example of sexual abuse. But let's talk about the little T's, right? There's something wrong with this family, and I feel like I'm the only one speaking up, and everyone else is like, there's nothing wrong. You're the problem. So then we kind of like, all right, I am. So then when we're in that moment, when we're dating and we have this nascent reason popping up, this doesn't feel right, right? We are conditioned to deny our truth right away because of our childhood.
I'm thinking about like past relationships that I had that I 100% did that.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100%, like was like, oh no, it's fine. I can, that's 100% from this is unbelievable.
So I have a line that I like to say. It is, trauma is the chief generator of the problems we have in core areas of authentic self. So trauma is the chief generator of the problems we have within our authentic self. So if you're dating and your authentic self is saying, this doesn't feel right, if you have not really had a trauma in your life and you're a pretty functional person, you're going to walk away and you're like, this doesn't feel right. And I don't give a shit what this guy thinks or what anyone thinks. But if you're denying your authentic self of who you really are, that's an indication of unresolved trauma.
You got to work on that.
Yeah.
And you can. I mean,
you can. And so my frustration 2 years ago, I didn't know any of this stuff that I'm just telling you about.
I mean, I don't think most people do. I think people walk around thinking like it's the other person's fault. They have no accountability. They're blaming the other partner. They're saying he's a narcissist. But meanwhile, you got to own your shit. And you got to do your work.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you start to really do the work, when you are co-parenting with a narcissist, let's say, and they're throwing one lie to you after another, or gaslighting you, or distorting the truth, if you are fully healed or pretty good, you'll instantly know, well, that's his reality.
Sure.
But that's not mine.
Exactly.
And I'm okay with that. And you can acknowledge that. And you're not sitting there trying to change their mind over and over and over again. And that's what so many of the problems, and I think that's what often leads people to my book, is they're trying to co-parent with someone. They're trying to change their minds. Yes. And I'm like, you're barking up the wrong tree. It's never going to happen.
Never.
Right. Okay, so you can end up looking at their background and saying, my God, this kid, you look at this, as I say, this kid. So when you're co-parenting, let's say with a narcissist, you got to see them as a kid. So all trauma results in developmental, emotional immaturity.
I remember you saying that before.
Yeah. But we're that way too. Right? We are emotionally immature, especially if we get into a relationship with a narcissist right away. We are not developed. We have that adopted adult self of caretaking, fixing someone, rescuing someone, being a codependent, all of that. And as the healthier that we get and we understand this, we'll see more conflict with a narcissist. That's often why we end up divorcing them.
What if you're in a relationship and you're healthy, whatever, and you bring this up and you start talking about childhood trauma and blah, blah, blah. And the person that you're with says, oh, I don't have any. I had the best childhood, and you clearly know that they did. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Or you clearly know that, do you see what I'm saying? Like, don't you think is there a person that didn't have any childhood trauma?
I've never seen one. Actually, you know what? I can think of one guy. He's a really good friend of mine. And he really didn't have any. And he is just the nicest, happiest guy.
Oh, is he single? I'm just kidding.
No, he's not. Yeah. But he is one in a million. I don't know, So this is a great example. Okay. Because I'm dating someone right now. Yeah. And I love him. He's a great guy. 6 months. We're 6 months in.
Oh, yay.
And I got to tell you, I'm a hard person to date. Can you imagine dating me?
Me too. How about me?
Occupational hazard.
I agree. I'm the same girl. And I don't know how my boyfriend. I mean, we've talked.
Oh, and I mean, because I told him the other day, I said, the problem with dating me is it's like I have X-ray vision. I can see right through someone because of the training that I've had and all the work that I've done on myself. Right. So one of the things I've been picking up about him is this avoidance. Just not wanting to check in with, he overcommits and underdelivers. Well, that triggers my abandonment shit, right? I feel not heard. I'm being blown off and you're going to leave me and neglect me. I admit that.
Yeah, of course.
And you should, I sometimes feel like we should record our quote arguments because we never argue because we just talk things through using all the coaching that I teach people. And it's just hilarious of just like, well, what I'm making up about that, and my wounded self is saying this, right?
You should record it.
But I say that to him. I said, well, I logically know that you're not abandoning me. I know this because I know that you wouldn't want to, but this is what's coming up for me. And I have to process that. And that's not your job to fix me. I always say that's not your job to fix me and help me through that. I have to parent myself through that.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to use that.
I have to parent myself through that.
To fix me. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because oftentimes I don't want to, what's the word? I don't know. Oftentimes in relationships, we start to rely on our partners to parent us. I'm having a bad emotion, and it's your job to make me feel better. It's one of the biggest mistakes we have in relationships, right? Or our partners are mad at us, and it's my job to make him feel better. That's not really true. It's not your job. You can give them as much information as possible, but he has to self-correct and self-parent through those emotions, right? So anyway, as we're going through this this debate, argument, whatever, and that unavailability that he has, this is what I said. Somewhere in your childhood, I swear to God, somewhere in your childhood, and I'm not going to coach you because I have a major boundary around this any relationship is like, even girlfriends, I'll ask them, do you want my coaching hat on or do you want a friend? Because that could be very off-putting.
Yeah,
right?
I'm with you.
Somewhere in your childhood, you were probably given assignments as a child that you couldn't handle, but you said you could do it.
Yes. Yes.
And if you were to have said no or had a boundary, that could have, you've got some kind of cue as a child that that's not okay. And in his world, his mom is only 20 years older than him. So that leads me to think she's 20 when she had him. She's a kid.
Yeah.
So she didn't know how to parent him. And he probably took on a major parenting role for her.
Oh, for sure.
So when guys typically do this a lot, I've seen this with just a lot of my friends and male clients. So when guys take on this parenting role for their mom, as they get older, that's called enmeshment, by the way.
Okay.
And as they get older, when their partners are asking them to do things, their trauma reaction is shutting down and not doing it. They don't even know they're doing this. They don't even know they're doing it. They feel bad for themselves. They feel bad. So this is what ends up becoming what I call love avoidance. A love avoidant matches with a love addict every single time. And that dynamic is what I call lala. It's fucking crazy, right? So I don't think he is a love avoidant, but I have said there is some avoidance and vagueness within you. And let's explore that. But guess what? It's not my job to fix you. If you want to know, if you want to stay dating with me, it's your job to go fix that.
Okay, what if you have a love avoidant and a love addict? It's cuckoo, right?
So huge intensity, huge highs, huge lows. Both of you can't experiment with moderation. A love addict will often create drama and intensity to get the avoidant to pay attention.
Oh,
yeah.
Is this like attachment styles? Kind of a little bit.
It's in the family of attachment
style, and my coaching me. My boyfriend is avoidant, so we kind of have a little bit of a.
I mean, we could do a whole thing on just the whole love avoidant, love addict cycle. Will you come back?
Of course I will.
And do that.
Yeah, I love you.
It.
I'm telling you, and this is just the truth. Your podcast episodes for me are my highest downloads.
Really?
I swear to God.
That's awesome. Thanks, everyone.
You. I would have you here every day.
I know. We should create our own show. We should create our show.
I let you talk for an hour. No one gets an hour on my show.
Oh gosh. Well, I'll shut up now.
Like, such a big no. Literally, like you. I mean, you're just so full. That's why I hardly talk, because your information is so valuable.
Thank you.
And really, like, I think everyone should come to you, because I think we need to know what to do next. Like, we know what the trauma is. We know how to find it, but like, how do we heal from it? That's right. The next episode.
Exactly.
And just go to Lindsey. Just everyone go to Lindsey.
And it's really hard because this is a side note, but I have a really hard time articulating that in my marketing, right? In my work, because it's like, if I start putting on Instagram about your childhood trauma, it's like, unfollow, right? Because no one really wants to hear that. They don't, because a lot of them don't identify that they've had trauma.
Well,
they don't.
That's why everyone needs, we got to push this. It's true, because they don't, they have no, like, maybe you need to say, like, do you even, like, I don't know how to do it, but like, do you even know what, like, you've had childhood trauma, you just don't realize it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And it's basically, I always just say, if you're constantly seeing blocks in your relationship and things keep patterns, it is something going on with your past and your partner's past. And it's up to you to work on that.
Yeah. And I think that people feel badly because they don't want their parents to be upset. Like, that's like, I don't want my parents to think that, like, I'm not appreciative or I don't love them, or but here's the bottom line is, I know. But
that's a classic caretaking. That is a classic carried emotion, right? I'm so worried about them and how they feel. Well, so I'm not going to check myself out. I'm not going to even work on me.
I'm a first child that took care of 3 other babies. Like,
there you go.
That means I can tell you exactly. I know exactly. Mom, that's your fault. I'm just kidding.
It's nobody's fault. Our parents teach us what they were taught. It's generational,
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't, and but it's true. You have to take care of yourself. You have to.
Yeah, you do. Yourself is the most important.
Everyone has to. Lindsey, you're absolutely fantastic. And so blessings. Wait, we have so many things to go in the show notes. Everybody needs to check the show notes.
Yeah. Right. Lessons of a Breakup is a free email that you can get. It's a book, but I offer it to free, where you're going to get a blessing and a lesson. It's a very spiritual thing, FYI. But it's when you're going through a pain of a breakup, one of the biggest issues is that when we are not having moderation around our pain, it means we've made our partners our higher power. That's what addicts do. We make the love addicts, right? We make someone else our higher power. So in order to get past that pain, we've got to find another higher power within us. And I offer this daily email that you get called Blessings of a Breakup. That's free. And click on the link in your show notes for that. Okay.
We need to have you come back.
Please.
I'm going to make a Just Jen with you. We'll take a Friday and you'll come back and we'll do this again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Lindsey, I adore you. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Okay. So get out a pencil, Lindsey Ellison. Everything's going to be in the show notes. She has books. She has programs. Lindsey, I appreciate you so much, honey.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate
you. Being here. Everybody, you know where to find me, jenniferhurwitz.com or Instagram at Doing Relationships Right. And that's it. Everyone do something great for yourself. I say this every week. Find something great, do something great. Listen to Just Jen on Fridays. And I don't know, follow Lindsey Ellison everywhere. She's fabulous. Thanks, you guys. Peace, love, and so much truth. Have a fabulous day. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, guys.